The Big Lebowski wasn't just a stoner comedy, it was a myth in sweatpants. A film noir that forgot its own plot, wandered off in a bathrobe, and came back holding a white Russian. But behind the mustaches and bowling balls, it bombed. Hard. The dude was real, and he was in Hollywood the whole time. A Rolling Stones song only got cleared because of one line nobody saw coming. That quote, it turned into a philosophy with real-life followers. These are 20 weird facts about the Big Lebowski, and somewhere between the chaos and the pins, we still don't know how good the dude is at bowling. He wasn't chasing the dream. He was trying not to spill his drink. Number 1, he didn't bowl. He didn't live in a rundown apartment, but he absolutely called himself the dude. His name was Jeff Dowd, a shaggy, big-hearted movie promoter who once helped the Coen brothers distribute their early film Blood Simple. He was part of a radical group in the 60s called the Seattle 7. Yes, that's Seattle 7, the same one Walter yells about during a bowling meltdown. But what stuck with the Coens wasn't the politics, it was his vibe. Dowd wore flip-flops to meetings. He drank White Russians in the middle of the day. He mumbled, he rambled. He always had some story that went nowhere. And he actually introduced himself as the dude. So when the Coens started crafting the Big Lebowski, they didn't invent the dude from thin air. They just hit record. And here's the kicker, Jeff Dowd loved it. He embraced the film, showed up to Lebowski Fests, signed autographs. Because while everyone else was quoting the movie, he was just quoting himself. Number 2, it wasn't just weed and bowling. Underneath the bathrobe was a blueprint. The Coens built the Big Lebowski like a Raymond Chandler detective story. Twists, red herrings, confused leads. Only this time, instead of a chain-smoking gumshoe, you had the dude. No clues, no urgency, just vibes. But that's the genius. The dude wasn't solving the mystery. He was the mystery, a passive soul drifting through a world that made no sense and didn't care if he cracked the case. He wasn't broken, he was untouchable. And that quiet inversion, that's what made it feel timeless. Number 3, not the narrator, not the dude, the Elder Labowski. That's who the Coen brothers originally wanted Marlon Brando to play. Yes, that Marlon Brando, the method god, the man who refused direction. They pictured him in a wheelchair, surrounded by velvet curtains, thundering in full Shakespearean rage about bums and briefcases. It was never a serious pursuit, more of a fantasy casting joke between scenes. But part of them wondered, what if he said yes? Of course, Brando passed. He was in declining health. He wasn't taking many roles. And honestly, he probably would have thrown the script in the ocean. But losing Brando forced them to pivot. And that's when they found David Huddleston. No gravitas, no legend, just grit. Huddleston didn't try to elevate the role. He committed to its absurdity, the bluster, the fraud, the way he barked.
The bums will always lose! Do you hear me, Lebowski?
Like he was delivering Gettysburg. And that's why it worked. Because in a movie where everyone was pretending to be something they weren't, they didn't need a god. They needed a blowhard. Number 4, the sweater, his. The sunglasses, his. Even the jelly sandals, yep, all Jeff. Bridges showed up with a duffel bag full of his own clothes. Not to be quirky, but because it wasn't a performance. He was the dude, or at least a version of him. Before every take, he'd turn to the Coens and ask, did the dude burn one on the way here? If the answer was yes, he'd rub his eyes, mess up his hair, and slouch deeper into the part. He wasn't method, he was something stranger. He was comfortable, and that comfort became iconic. Number 5, you remember the scene. Walter's losing it, swinging a crowbar, screaming bloody murder at some poor kid's car. The original line, unairable. So for cable TV, they had to dub it. And what came out was legend.
You see what happens, Larry, when you a stranger in the eye?
Absurd. Perfect. A masterpiece of accidental comedy. But here's what no one saw coming. That censored joke. It stuck in the mind of a young singer named Phoebe Bridgers. Years later, she'd name her debut album after it, Stranger in the Alps. And just like that, a throwaway TV dub became poetry. Number 6, he only had a few lines, 2 brief scenes, a purple jumpsuit and a bowling ball. But John Turturro turned that tiny role into pure cult legend. The Coens gave him the basics, a rival bowler with a bizarre flair. But that wasn't enough for Turturro. He needed to know who Jesus really was. So he built the entire character himself. The hairnet, the licking of the ball, that sideways strut, the way he'd roll one finger at a time. All him. He even came up with the idea that Jesus was a registered offender and pitched it to the Coens with a straight face. They didn't flinch. They loved it. It gave the character a dark edge, a reason why he was so over the top. why he had to perform his confidence so loudly, why no one seemed to trust him, even when he rolled a strike. That backstory was never spelled out in dialogue, but you could feel it underneath every frame, because Turturro wasn't playing a cartoon. He was playing a man hiding something in plain neon sight. Number 7. She had no name recognition, no star billing, and no expectations. But Tara Reid walked into that audition and did something nobody else dared. She didn't play it safe. She went full chaos. The Coen brothers were considering bigger names. Cameron Diaz was rumored. Even Charlize Theron had been floated. But when it came to casting Bunny Lebowski, they wanted someone fearless. So Tara walked in, delivered the infamous blow line, and nailed it. The room cracked up. Not because it was funny, but because it was perfectly unhinged. She wasn't trying to act outrageous, she just was. And in a film full of surreal characters, that moment sealed it. Bunny wasn't a joke. She was the powder keg that lit the whole plot. And Reid, that one wild audition changed everything, turning her into a cult icon before she ever became a star. Number 8. Julianne Moore was lost. Not emotionally, not creatively, just linguistically. Maud Lebowski spoke in surreal art theory, high feminist riddles, and deadpan absurdity. And Moore, she didn't get it. So she asked the Coens, "What does this even mean?" Their answer? "Don't worry about it. Just sound like you understand." And suddenly, it clicked. She wasn't meant to connect the dots. She was meant to own the madness. So she leaned into the weirdness, let her lines float like performance art. And somehow, by not understanding Maud, she became her. Number 9. The fake toe. The chipped polish, sealed in bandage like a leftover. Audiences squirmed. During early test screenings, one moment made people recoil hard enough to shift in their seats. The severed toe reveal. Producers panicked. It's too much. It's too weird. But the Coens held firm. This wasn't shock for shock's sake. It was absurdity turned menace. Because in Lebowski, violence isn't just grotesque. It's theatrical. And that toe, it stayed. Painted, packaged, and proudly disgusting. Number 10. Music rights are brutal, especially if you're trying to license the Rolling Stones. The Coens knew that, but they had to have Dead Flowers for the closing credits. There was no backup plan, no second choice. So they reached out to Alan Klein, the notoriously tough music executive who controlled the Stones' early catalog. Klein quoted them a price, $150,000, just for the one song. It was a hard no, but then something happened. Klein watched the film and he heard that line,
"I hate the Eagles, man."
Suddenly, everything changed. Klein loved that jab. He was still bitter about the Stones being compared to the Eagles in the 70s. So hearing the dude trash them, that was personal revenge. He picked up the phone and gave them the song for free. No contract war, no red tape, just a one-liner that hit the right nerve. In a film all about bowling, rugs, and nihilists, the most expensive needle drop was won by a grudge. Number 11. The guns, the buzz cut, the obsession with rules, even in bowling. Walter Sobchak wasn't just a Coen brothers invention. He was based on someone real. Two people, actually. The first, John Milius, the legendary gun-loving screenwriter of Apocalypse Now, a real-life conservative firebrand who once said he wanted his gravestone to read, "Keep your hands off my gun, you commie bastard." He was the inspiration. But the rest came from a friend of actor John Goodman, a Vietnam vet who used to bark rules at waiters and argue about politics mid-meal. So when Goodman stepped into Walter's shoes, it wasn't guesswork. It was muscle memory. The yelling, the flashbacks, the constant need to win the argument even if no one was listening. It all came from real voices the Coens had heard and never forgotten. And when John Milius himself finally saw the movie, he didn't sue. He smiled. Yeah, that's me. Number 12. Here's the wildest twist. Walter wasn't a veteran. He just thought he was. Nowhere in the film is it confirmed, and that's on purpose. Every story he tells, every outburst about Nam is vague, inconsistent, and suspiciously loud. It wasn't about military trauma. It was about a man inventing his own gravitas. He screamed it so often, he believed it. So did everyone else. Because in a world this absurd, confidence is reality. Number 13. Donnie barely speaks, and when he does, Walter shuts him down.
What the f*** is he talking about?
My rug.
Forget it, Donnie, you're out of your element.
It became a running gag, so iconic it made audiences laugh out loud. But for Steve Buscemi, it wasn't funny behind the scenes. He said filming The Big Lebowski made him feel invisible. Line after line, scene after scene. His character was cut off, ignored, dismissed. Even when Donnie was just trying to help, the punchline was silence. At first, Buscemi thought it was just for the rhythm, but the deeper it went, the more personal it started to feel. And when he asked the Coens why, they didn't deny it. The joke was the point. Donnie was the guy no one ever listened to until it was too late. A quiet soul trapped in a loud world, forgotten until he wasn't there anymore. And that's the gut punch. Because when Donnie dies, Walter's rage collapses. The dude freezes, and for once, they listen, not to what he said, but to what he meant. Number 14. He strolls in with a mustache, a cowboy hat, and a voice that feels like it's been around since time began. Sam Elliot only had a few scenes, but they changed everything. The stranger wasn't in the early drafts. The Coens added him late, as a narrator. A calm, mythic presence to anchor the madness. He doesn't fix anything. He barely even helps. But when he says,
"The dude abides,"
in a film where no one makes sense, he gave the story its soul. Number 15. Not Rolling Stone, not Variety, floor covering weekly. After the movie came out, the Coens were asked to talk rugs because of one line.
This rug I have, it really tied the room together.
Most filmmakers would have passed. The Coens. They said yes.
We did a really long interview with the woman. She was really taken aback.
They gave the Carpet Trade magazine one of their longest interviews ever, full of insights, sarcasm, and design opinions. They even offered to pose for the cover. That's the Coens in a nutshell. Take the weirdest details seriously, and let the serious stuff get weird. Number 16. The sleazy porn king's mansion wasn't just a location. It was architectural royalty. That concrete palace by the sea? It's the Sheets Goldstein residence, a real home in Los Angeles designed by John Lautner, one of Frank Lloyd Wright's proteges. The house has no 90-degree angles, no interior doors, just glass, concrete, and unapologetic decadence. It's been featured in Bandits, Snowfall, Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, and even Kanye West photo shoots. In a movie full of misfits and myths, it was the one character that didn't have to act. Number 17. It started as a joke, a one-night tribute, a weird little gathering of dudes in bathrobes. No studio backing, no Hollywood guests, just white Russians, bowling alleys, and one rug that tied it all together. But somehow, it never stopped. The Lebowski Fest was born in 2002, launched by two superfans in Louisville, Kentucky. What they expected? Maybe a dozen folks quoting lines and tossing gutter balls. What they got? A crowd, then a following, then a full-blown cult movement. People flew in from Europe, came dressed as marmots, nihilists, Maud in her Viking helmet. They reenacted scenes. They held trivia tournaments. They turned Donnie's ashes into confetti. And every year, it grew. Even Jeff Bridges showed up once, played music, hugged fans, and told the crowd, "You're all dudes to me." Over 20 years later, Lebowski Fest isn't just a fan event. It's a philosophy, a place where every misfit finds their lane, and no one is out of their element. Because for one weekend, the dude really does abide. Number 18. It wasn't just a catchphrase, it became a movement. That final line, simple, strange, and oddly peaceful, hit deeper than expected. It's been quoted in sermons, printed on campaign posters, tattooed across shoulders and backs. By 2005, it even became a registered religion, Dudeism, a philosophy of chill, non-violent detachment rooted in Taoism and bowling. The dude didn't preach, he just existed. And somehow, in all that confusion, he gave people something real to believe in. Number 19. In 1998, The Big Lebowski landed in theaters with a thud. Critics shrugged, audiences wandered, and the studio quietly wrote it off. A $15 million budget for a $17 million box office return. The dude, it seemed, had rolled a gutter ball, but the Coens knew what they'd made. And they knew it wasn't built for opening weekend. Because this movie wasn't fast, it wasn't clean, and it definitely wasn't for everyone. It was weird, winding, and packed with one-liners that didn't land until they echoed. Then came the DVDs, in dorm rooms, on late-night couches, passed from one oddball to another. Suddenly, The Big Lebowski became one of Universal's best-selling cult DVDs of all time. Quotes turned into rituals, characters turned into archetypes, and a stoner noir about nothing became everything. Theaters didn't get it, but the outsiders did, because once it left the spotlight, the dude finally found his audience. Number 20. When The Big Lebowski premiered, the reviews weren't just mixed, they were dismissive. Some critics called it a stoner mess. Others said it rambled with no point. Even Roger Ebert gave it a lukewarm shrug, and he loved the Coens. To Hollywood, it was a footnote. To cinephiles, a punchline. But the film didn't care. It abided. Years passed. The DVD spread. The quotes got louder, and slowly, one review at a time, the critics came back. Ebert rewatched it, then again, then called it one of the most inspired films films of our time. By 2014, the US Library of Congress stepped in and sealed the deal. They declared The Big Lebowski culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, and preserved it forever in the National Film Registry. Not because it was perfect, but because it refused to play by the rules. And somehow, that made it timeless. A movie that critics once rolled their eyes at now sits in the same vault as Casablanca and Citizen Kane. Not bad for a guy in a bathrobe. Bonus fact, you've seen the shoes, you've seen the alley, you've seen Walter screaming about league rules, but there's one thing you've never actually seen: the dude bowling. Not once, not in the entire movie. He walks, he drinks, he watches, but every time he steps up to the lane, the Coens cut away. No strike, no gutter ball, nothing. Why? Because for all the chaos, the nihilists, the tow, the rug that tied it all together, The Big Lebowski was never about bowling. It was about drifting, wandering, trying to keep your robe on in a world that doesn't make sense. The dude wasn't a champion. He was a placeholder, a guy who shows up, rolls his ball, and maybe, or maybe not, knocks anything down. And that's the mystery that still abides. The Big Lebowski never chased awards. It didn't beg for attention. It just abided. And somehow, in doing nothing, it became everything. A cult classic, a cultural landmark, a lifestyle. So pour a White Russian, polish the ball, and take it easy. If this one still lives rent-free in your mind, drop a comment. Tell us what offbeat classic we should roll into next, because sometimes the weirdest movies are the ones that really tie us together.